AskReddit by iCloudXy. If a world war were to break out, which country would offer the greatest safety? Some South American country. Working on some farm in Uruguay for instance. Argentina worked out well for survivors of WWII. A poorer country with no oil or strategic ports. Central African Republic will be the safest. https://en.m.wiki.org/Central_African_Republic_civil_war got it. Something unaligned in the global south. With the exception of Australia, most of the global south remains untouched in a nuclear war as well. Edit. It has been clarified to me that I use the term global south when I meant southern hemisphere. Probably Antarctica, or New Zealand. I'd head to NZ if for no other reason than so many maps forget to add them. Uruguay or maybe southern Chile? Yes, Chile is protected by the Pacific Ocean and the Andes. It's the safest should a nuclear war break out. There are also some Pacific islands that rank highs according to a study. The funny thing is that the safest place will become very dangerous as everybody flocks to it for safety. Not true. If, as the question is posed, world war broken out, some island country would close the borders flights. As long as they were self-reliant in producing food, they would be much better off than lots of the world. Add to the fact if they aren't particularly aligned with either side and have no natural resources to offer, they will remain off most radars during a period of unrest like a world war. There was a common story amongst youngsters in the 80s that both USA and USSR had nukes aimed at NZ. This was in case either side was losing, they would nuke us so the other couldn't use us as a food source. Have no idea if this was true or not. I'm not sure NZ is large enough to supply either of those countries adequately with food tbh. Not counting you guys out, it's just there's massive populations to support on either side. South Africa. Ironically, the state failure has motivated anyone who can afford it to generate their own electricity and move towards grid independence. Plenty of natural resources and remote areas. Plenty of water, mountains, forests and desert. After non-involvement in a world war, Africa will thrive. Iceland. Finally, despite American efforts and the Mighty Ducks too, they would be the greatest hockey power in the world. Southern Hemisphere countries, possibly not Australia, though. Peru would be my bet. The first main reason is that northern and southern hemispheres don't exchange airflow, good old Coriolis forces. So, fallout doesn't easily migrate over the equator. That leaves 5 countries as far south as possible. Australia is a big enough power that might attract some action from China. RSA has issues. New Zealand is lovely, and English is the first language, but every other man and his dog are aiming to go there, and I just prefer Peru over Argentina. Switzerland. They have nuclear bunkers with enough room for like 97% of the nation. And also, the Alps. Sorry you can't afford it. The locals will probably have a vote to say they aren't taking any foreigners, but they will happily look after their valuables for them. Probably New Zealand, or most of South America. The United States. You'll think 800 billion a year is for shit you've heard of? My sweet summer child. Beyond that, if it's gotten to the point where the US is no longer safe, the entire world is probably a nuclear hellscape. There's a country that claims sovereignty, which is itself a boat in the ocean. There. We can just float out for a good long while, float back to check on things and leave again if necessary. Edit. Spelling. See land, but it's not a boat, it's a defunct drilling platform. You're stuck in the channel, not going anywhere. Fiji or Barbados. New Zealand and South America. You want to be in a self-sufficient country that is out of harm's way. New Zealand. Nobody could find it. It's not on the map. New Zealand. It is far enough away from everything that it would be a hey, we have conquered or glassed every country on earth. Did we miss anywhere kind of thing lol. It also has a small enough population that it can survive without foreign trade if required, but large enough that people are not living on top of each other. For what it is worth, Australia would have been my response, but we have really put ourselves out there with our previous government being absolutely terrible at diplomacy. This all but guarantees that we will get hit if WW3 breaks out. Germany. They do not want to be those guys a third time. Probably either Australia or northern Canada. Europe is generally a battleground historically. India and China would be at war and a battleground. The US, China, Russia and other major European powers are all at risk of being either invaded or nuked. But Australia and northern Canada are pretty far from anything. I also think South America would be decently safe from the war. Canada is between Russia and the US. Chile or to lesser degree Argentina. Out of the way enough to not be immediately involved with the fighting, but developed enough to still offer a decent life there. Borders in South America are also very well aligned with natural geography, so little risk for smaller scale conflicts breaking out alongside the big one. Ethnically and culturally homogeneous enough that infighting within the country is a lot less likely than places like the US, Europe or Brazil. Plus it's a fairly nice place to live in terms of landscape, climate and culture. Corrupt though. Time to update stereotypes. https://www.transparency.org/en/cpi/2023. Even though there is corruption, is significantly better than some European countries like Portugal, Spain, Italy and Czechia. It's just below USA and better than South Korea. Top result in the region, except for Uruguay. I'm an Ireland and IDK. I feel like no one hates Ireland. Like the worst is yeah, they exist, but what did they ever do? We are close to the UK, who a lot of PPL hate, so we may get a bit of fallout unfortunately, but TBH I think it's a nice spot to watch the missiles fly by. We're also neutral and not in NATO, which helps a lot there. In such a scenario, God forbid obviously, the prevailing wind is southwesterly, so my bet would also be to go home and hope we get lucky with the wind. Greatest safety from what exactly? I've heard and read that New Zealand, that's why all the rich fuckers are building bunkers there. Bosnia and Herzegovina.